Hello, my name is Ben.
Hi, my name is Andrew Coltrane, also known as Partly Robot.
And we are the hosts of the Too Vague podcast. Today, we are going to talk about the word ability. Andrew, when I say the word ability to you, what is the first thing that comes to mind?
Oh boy, the first thing that comes to mind is I just made a zine called Ability. So that means a lot of things come to mind. Do podcast listeners know what a zine is?
I think they do. I don't think my aunt does.
Well, can she send in an email?
She could.
And then I could like voice memo you what the answer would be.
Right.
Or I could just talk about it right now.
You could just talk about it.
Okay,
right
fine.
I think that's good.
All right. But so, and Nora, send the question anyway. Okay, so a zine is like this kind of thing that we did back before we had podcasts. No, it's a little.
Well, it's kind of true.
It's kind of true.
Say.
It's very much in a similar spirit in the sense that, in the days when photocopies were cheap and everyone was an artist, you could make a little photocopied magazine of your thoughts and dreams and comics and whatever, and then make a few dozen copies of it and just foist them off on random strangers.
Yeah,
and friends, and
right.
Sometimes sell them in a record store. They used to have those
record stores.
Right. But now, yeah, there's still people who like zines. There's still bookstores. I've talked to bookstore owners, and actually the pandemic's been good for them.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, for some reason, people decided they needed to buy books.
Yeah, more reading.
More reading, and more like, what the heck are we going to do at home?
Right. Is it interesting that people prefer the physical? Because I mean, I would think that bookstores would be getting a lot of orders, but then also a lot of those online like
the ebooks.
Yeah.
As Ben Bova referred to them, the cyberbooks.
The cyberbooks.
Yeah, Ben Bova predicted the cyberbook back in 1970 or whatever. I don't know. Now he wrote a book called Cyberbooks.
Okay.
This is such a tangent.
No, that's fine. we that's totally okay. That's basically the show.
I was going to talk about ability, but let me talk to you about old guy sci-fi author Ben Bova.
Okay.
I don't know. He wrote some stories and I read them. In high school, when I would hide out in the library during every break because I had crippling social anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
So every lunch and before school, I would just be in the library and I would pick a book off the shelf and read parts of it. And then when lunch was over, I would put it back on the shelf, same spot.
Right. And
just, pick it up the next day because nobody was checking out this collection of Ben Bova short stories from the library.
Mm-hmm.
But, so that circles me back to ability and my relationship with printed words.
Your zine is called Ability, Emerging from the Social Constraints of Neurodivergence and Disability.
Yes.
So that whole story about you and the library and social anxiety, is that when you kind of realized that there was something different about you, or...
I would say I probably actually realized there was something different about me around when I was 10 years old, just out of sync with everybody and just sort of, recognizing and deciding, well, I guess I'm weird. Mm-hmm. And in 5th grade, that was fine.
Right.
Middle school got really hard because everybody started to try to become hyper normal in middle school. Right. Like everybody needs to conform to, the social norms that they see in the Brat Pack movies. Everybody has to act like those people. Right. And I'm like, I don't really feel like I'm represented in the Breakfast Club.
Right.
So that was not my thought process at all at the time. It was more like, I'm going to keep my windbreaker zipped up all the way up to my chin until sometime in May when my friend that I've gone to school with since kindergarten asked me if I like being a nerd. And I recognize in myself some troubles with a lot of like social anxiety and figuring out how to talk to people. And there were times where I just would not talk to people. Like maybe my vocal cords didn't work. And, or for whatever reason, you know, there's a lot of things, and I'm talking about, this was like in the late 80s where stuff started getting really hard because I was my freshman year in high school in like 1988, 89. And that's when, you know, I didn't have any friends at my high school yet, or I felt like that.
It was a new high school for you, new people. You didn't know anyone else, or
not really. It was more like I felt like everybody that I'd known, like everybody, like my elementary school fed into the 2 middle schools.
Right.
So in middle school, I was like half of my old elementary school kids, and then the other half went to this other middle school. And then we all came back for high school. And then the half that missed out on me in middle school were like, whoa, what happened to Andrew? And the thing is, like, you know, I'd become like this hyper withdrawn nerd because I just didn't get the leaps and bounds that other people were taking socially.
Right.
Where I was like, no, I want to still be liking the stuff I liked when I was 11.
Right.
Like, I'm really into Robotech still and comic books. And I want to really be into that. And people are getting girlfriends and boyfriends and stuff.
And are not into Robotech.
And they're not. Like, who? Luckily, I found some guys that were into the X-Men.
Okay.
My sophomore year.
Yeah.
And they were really into collecting mutants and saving them from the normals.
Do you think that I think now it seems to be that nerds are, I don't want to say in fashion, but it's sort of like it's more acceptable to be nerdy, almost to a point where it's not even being nerdy anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that is interesting, and I have conflicting feelings about that.
You know, let's take it back to ability, though.
Let's take it back to ability. That's good, because this was like the late 80s where I was recognizing I was having a lot of trouble. Academically, I was doing okay in my classes, actually probably getting straight A's because I wasn't doing anything else but reading comic books and doing my homework.
Right.
But, you know, socially, it was hard. I was avoiding any situation where I had to talk to another person because, you know, I had internal blocks, and it took me a long time to figure out workarounds for all that. And my comic book nerd friends helped.
Okay.
Because they were accepting of me how I was.
Right.
That helped.
When did you start expressing yourself through drawing and drawing these things for zines and writing and drawing?
Well,
was that a part of you dealing with high school and being a quote unquote a nerd and a comic book person or whatever?
It started there. I would do a lot of drawing as a tension reliever for, you know, basically I'm sitting in class. Maybe we're supposed to be taking notes on something, but I was like drawing new G.I. Joe vehicles or robots or whatever.
Right.
You know, that really important stuff.
Right. Exactly.
And doing a little bit of reading role-playing game manuals and generating characters and thinking it wouldn't be neat if I had a group of friends that we could actually do this with. And eventually I did get a couple of kids. It's always an interesting group that you end up with. Yeah, eventually by my senior year in high school, I fell in with the Rocky Horror Picture Show Drama Nerds. And that was also another really accepting, inclusive group.
Right. People who are different and understand, they have to navigate that or are more understanding of others and their differences and their uniqueness and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So
boy, I'm taking a long way around to get to
ability. That's fine.
Because, well, we're going to fast forward because I was in high school in late 80s, early 90s.
Right.
You know, around 1992, in the world of psychology, somebody started investigating some old psychological research that kind of had been neglected or ignored, or we don't want to look at it because it happened to come out of 1930s Austria. So there was sort of a taboo about looking into any kind of research that might have had anything to do with Nazis.
Right.
But somebody was like, well, this one guy, Hans Asperger, he's got a lot of research about this group of kids that he worked with that had some similar things to like the American definition of autism, but it was a little different.
Okay.
And maybe there's something, maybe we're missing out on a whole like group of people that maybe have some challenges and could use a different kind of help.
Right.
And so that's kind of where this, the Asperger's syndrome came from.
Mm-hmm.
And, I started looking around like, oh, there are people like this. A lot of them are in academia or in the arts, or there's that one guy in Talking Heads,
Right. David Byrne.
David Byrne, who eventually, turned around and said, yeah, I would totally identify with this. This explains a lot of my own social anxiety, my awkwardness, my different perspective on things.
Right.
And
that's also, it also explains the breakup too of the Talking Heads.
Yeah.
If you look into that, Tina Weymouth, I don't want to put words in her mouth, but I think I read an article where she still doesn't understand his perspective. She couldn't relate to it. A lot of things that we get confused about are things that we don't understand, right? Or don't want to understand.
That's right. And there's stuff you don't want to understand about yourself.
Right.
Because that's one thing about me is that I knew that I had challenges. What I didn't know was that not everybody was working as hard to overcome their challenges as I was.
Right.
Like, there's not been an uncommon occurrence for me to have to walk around the block 3 or 4 times before I can go into a new place to get a haircut. I mean, I'm better about that now because I found my place and I just go there every time. But
right,
like,
and I think that's to me. I mean, we'll talk about what the spectrum is and what that actually means, or if it means anything.
Yeah.
So going back to your zine ability, that came from a previous sort of glossary of terms that you came up with in A is for Asperger's a couple of years ago. Is that correct?
Yeah. That was something that I came up with because, let's see, I'm going to say it was about 10 years ago now.
Right.
Maybe 11. But that I finally got brave enough to crack open these books on Asperger's.
Mm-hmm.
And start to be brave enough to truly recognize, like, oh yeah, this is actually what I identify with. I have similar struggles with all of this. And so it started a really steep learning curve where I kind of threw myself into it. And I actually ended up, well, let's see, there was other couple directions that I came into it from. Mm-hmm. One of them was, I got tired of working, in a used bookstore, which I really liked hanging out around used books because I've always been comforted by books.
Correct.
And the nerdy people that work in used bookstores really, they all have their own interesting, quirky, things that I felt at home with.
Right.
And then
differences. Right.
Yeah. And then so I was like, okay, well, I need to maybe do something a little bit better. So I thought, well, middle school is where I started having trouble. Maybe I should try to become a middle school teacher.
I think I remember. Was that? I think I remember that.
Yeah. So I went back to school to get a teaching certificate here in Arizona.
Yeah. When was that again?
Oh boy, I actually graduated from that program in 2010. One of the things that I ended up doing a lot of was subbing in special ed programs a lot, and noticing that. In programs where there were kids with autism, as officially diagnosed, I kind of understood where they were coming from a lot better than the kids in the mainstream of the students.
Right.
It was just this thing. At first, I just started noticing, and then I just kept noticing it, and other people, I'd come in as a sub in a classroom with a bunch of other, paraeducators and a teacher, and they would notice that, hey, these kids, they respond to you pretty fast. It's like you got the magic touch or something. And I was like,
you could say that.
yeah, I have the magic. I have magic. All of a sudden, I have a secret power. I'm the autism whisperer.
Right.
And then, you know, then
the ability.
I have the ability. Yes. I have the ability to make connections with these people that are hard to make connections with.
Right.
And so I started looking into that more and what is that about, and realized that, it's really because we tend to recognize each other. It's one of those things where, you know, once I got brave enough to start going to like support groups and check it out and be in a room with other people who were, you know, okay with, you know, being autistic, and like we're in a room, we're all together. And then I realized that, I belong in this room. And that gave me a better sense of myself, a better sense of my agency.
But that came much later than
that came much later. Yeah, it took me
life.
a long time to get there because what I was saying about the, you know, the Asperger is becoming a thing in the 90s, like after I was done with public education, I was outside of that window where, you know, disabilities and things get identified as part of, you know, the social infrastructure.
Right.
Because once you graduate from high school, you know, you're just a normal adult. Doesn't matter who you are on the inside. You're 18 years old. You can vote, and in some states buy cigarettes, and you're a grown up.
Right.
And so there's nothing.
But what does that mean?
What does that mean? And for me, what it meant was, well, I did well in high school, and I got a good fee waiver over at the University of Arizona, and so I started college there feeling pretty good about that, and then instantly kind of crashed because I did not have like the social skills to navigate. I don't know, maybe it might have even been just the university library, like this huge place where you have to talk to somebody to get the book you want,
right,
and to figure it out. It's like,
it's not just knowing the Dewey Decimal System.
No, because it's Library of Congress there, and it's like,
right,
and it's microfiche and microfilm. I mean, now it's different because so much of that stuff is digital resources, and it's a lot easier to find that, you know, without having to go talk to a person about how do I use the machine.
Right. Right.
You know, you're like, oh, you can, I mean, there's different machines, but you know.
Right. But it's a more standardized sort of process where it's a computer and you can access all this stuff through there.
And for some reason, autistic people tend to be good at computers.
Yeah.
It's almost like they invented them.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, honestly, there's a lot of people who have strong suspicions about Alan Turing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like his whole deal really kind of fits the adult autism, you know, sort of scenario.
Right. He's the Turing test. The
Turing test guy. He's the imitation game guy.
Right.
And even though Benedict Cumberbatch will insist, no, he wasn't autistic. I'm like, well, you know.
Right.
Okay, Dr. Strange.
Right.
But what about your other autistic character, Sherlock Holmes?
Right.
No, I don't know. I mean, it's kind of tongue in cheek, but yeah.
You know what I found out recently that I didn't know was that Black Manta in the DC universe apparently was autistic.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and apparently, and I don't know if that's the movie universe where his story was that he had this form of autism, and basically he became Black Manta because they quote unquote cured him of this, but he also made him a murderer.
Huh.
So that's not really
not exactly the role model I'm reaching for.
No. And I was like, it was a looking at lists of autistic characters and things and movies and whatnot. I was like, well, that's not very
uplifting.
No, and it's not. And why would you want to cure something that's such a part of an individual and has impacts into creativity and it's a part that makes us unique. So it's not anything to cure.
Gosh, that's $1 million question.
Right.
And that is actually, there are many people that feel that way. Like, and honestly, I think
feel what way?
Like, feel that cure is not really the right approach.
No.
And and that's what that word neurodivergence and neurodiversity is about. It's sort of like, hey, let's widen our understanding of what the human experience is, and let's own the fact that brains don't come in one standard setting,
right? And
that's like the neurodiversity, because autism, is in essence, there's something different about how the brain works in autistic individuals. Now, between individuals with autism, it is different because, and that's where that term, autism spectrum comes from, because nobody is really exactly like anybody else.
Right.
Which makes it hard for insurance companies and diagnoses. They don't like that, which is why
they developed a spectrum, like a number or a ranking or
well, there probably are some numbers. There's some rankings.
It just seems like
it's sort of that's sort of a thing that it's not my favorite. Let's see. There is a lot of discussion in the autism community, which I've become more aware of and more part of, about describing somebody as high functioning versus low functioning is problematic because it makes it seem like some people are kind of think they're better than other people.
Right.
And it's really, that's part of why, like, there's a lot of people who don't really want to use the term Asperger's anymore.
Okay, yeah, I read that in the zine. It was kind of like you mentioned the fact that, and that was part of the reason why you kind of you kind of said, okay, well, we're starting all over a little bit with this scene about autism.
Yeah, and that's really part of it, is that with the last iteration of the diagnostic manual, the DSM, they got rid of Asperger's as its separate diagnosis, and sort of expanded what they called autism spectrum disorder.
Okay.
Which, they also got rid of this other diagnosis called pervasive developmental disability, not otherwise specified. So this big long term that you're like, well, what is that? PDD-NOS. It's like, well, it's kind of a type of autism that's different than these other types, but it's
any kind of, any kind of grouping like that can be problematic.
And that's the thing I think they figured out, is that all the groupings were problematic.
Right.
Like, there's autism. It's
a case-by-case sort of situation.
It's a case-by-case situation. And for a lot of people who would get like a label of high functioning because they could hold a conversation or something, it would be based on verbal ability, which does not necessarily translate into ability to keep a job without supports.
Right. Right.
And that's really the kind of thing, is that we've got a society that sort of has some homogenized expectations for what people can do. And if you don't fall within those expectations, it's just sort of like, well, tough luck. And so, what I'm really arguing for is to like recognize, well, instead of looking at what people can't do, let's maybe try to look harder at what they can do.
Right.
And see what part of our societal setup is actually making it hard for them to have ability.
Right.
Right. Because some of it is like, it's like totally expectations. There are some like modifications to the workday that can be given to people that can help them be productive.
Right.
And it could be simple things like, sensory things in the environment, like lighting or environmental noise could be really distracting and hard for somebody to be able to stay focused on their work.
Right.
part of that is like, well, maybe, you should look for a job that sort of is in line with your sensory needs. But another part is there's a lot of jobs where, well, like, the office spaces that kind of got rid of cubicles and went to like the open office format.
Yeah.
That is like a nightmare for somebody with any sensory issues at all.
Right.
And probably a nightmare for most people.
Yeah.
But it's cheap.
Yeah.
It's
yeah, I don't like I like the cubicle myself because there's a little bit of privacy.
Yeah.
Or as the English call it, privacy.
Privacy. Oh, the English. The English love me, apparently.
Oh, did they do?
Yeah. And let's go back to my old zine, the A is for Asperger's, which was my little glossary.
Oh yeah. I saw that you had actual people from what was the university?
Oh, University of Leeds.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
who actually contributed.
Exactly. So once I was exploring my diagnosis, got it confirmed, and my diagnosis paperwork says autism. So I made that first DNAs for Asperger's just as a way to explain a lot of these terms that I learned while researching my own diagnosis and researching other, people just learning, just going full into it.
Right.
And there's like all these words like alexithymia, which means I don't have the words for my feelings. Like, there's
well, it's like, then that's pretty much.
Yeah. Like,
that's like everyone, right?
Like everyone, it's sort of like, but there is this specific word with Greek roots that talks about not being able to put words to your feelings. And then there's other cool phenomenon, prosopagnosia, which is face blindness.
So you just don't see any features or? No,
and then this isn't something that I actually experienced, but I've talked to people who do, and it's neat. It's just like, you just don't recognize people by their facial features. And it's just like that part of the brain just isn't connected.
So do you recognize them by voice?
Yeah. You can recognize people by voice. You can recognize people by their mannerisms, by the way they walk. And this is something that I realized because, I work in school still and had been away for, a year basically away from school. And then we came back for some hybrid, and all the kids were masked and all the adults were masked.
Oh, you're talking about recently.
Currently. Yeah. In real life. And I'm like, this is an example of me like seeing a kid that I hadn't seen in a year and recognizing them, but knowing that I wasn't recognizing them from their face. Right. And at the same time, meeting people like colleagues for the first time in real life who had only seen on Zoom, but now they have a mask on and I have no idea who they are.
Right.
Like, it's not that I have no idea. It's like, seeing someone, it's like, I don't know what your body language is outside of the Zoom rectangle.
Right.
So I can't recognize you right away.
Right. But I mean, that's part of what this I'm sorry, what was the word again?
Oh, prosopagnosia.
Prosopagnosia.
Which means I can't remember your face in Greek.
Oh,
yeah.
Interesting.
Or can't remember faces.
Right.
Because like agnosia is like agnostic, like I don't know. I don't know your face. The prosopag... Yeah, whatever.
Prosopagnosia?
Prosopagnosia is...
I don't know why I remember that. That's just a fun word to say.
It's a fun word. I learned a lot of fun words.
Prosopagnosia.
And basically... And there's like another one that... it's sort of like you can't identify people by their voices.
These all fit into social sort of hurdles.
Yeah, there's social... So they are things... There are lots of little possible hiccups in the neurology that can create social complications. And, sometimes it's just speech processing delays. Like it takes me a little bit longer to, figure out, when's it my turn to talk in a conversation?
Right.
Or, things like that. Or like, I can't remember somebody's name if I don't see it written down. But if I take the time to visualize how somebody's name would look written down when I meet them, then I can, if I do that extra step, I can remember it better.
Right.
But I do think that this is something that lots of people can experience. You
Right.
know? It's not just an autism thing. None of these things are just autism things.
Right.
But with autism, you know, some of them build up. And that's really where like the social stuff happens, is that you've got all these little extra hiccups because your brain is maybe looking at different things, you know, spending a lot of energy looking at patterns in the architecture around you, patterns in, you know, looking at different stuff than most people look at.
Right.
So it's taking up a different part, you know, you're taking up brain power, and then the other stuff is getting a little less power, and you're having hiccups. And then you say something terribly awkward,
Right.
because your wife comes home from getting a haircut, and then you're like, you look different. Are you taller? And she's like, I told you I was going to go get my hair done.
Right.
so like, yeah, that's
okay.
why you look taller. Okay,
Gotcha.
that's because your hair is short up, not on the shoulders anymore. So
Right.
You're-
So,
and
you,
so it's
obviously you've stretched out a bit, and now
and
you're taller.
I, you know, it's like this kind of thing is like, well, okay, I was picking up the information, but I was interpreting it in a weird way and not connecting it to my memory the way you might be expected to.
Right. When I met you and when I hung out with you, whenever you said anything like that, I just thought that was a really creative way of thinking of things, a unique way of thinking of things. And I never thought about it as a disability or something that was wrong. I just thought of it as a really creative, unique perspective on things. You know what I mean?
Well, you remember like my little mantras that I used to have then, right? Like I would like talk about like my goal to have for aloof sarcasm.
Right.
Right.
I remember aloof sarcasm.
Aloof sarcasm. And that was like me protecting myself from whatever socially awkward thing I was going to do, because I'm aloof and sarcastic. That's my thing. So if I accidentally did that, like, hey, I'm the aloof sarcastic guy.
Right. I'm on brand.
I'm on brand. Also, well, I didn't understand that hurt your feelings, but I'm the aloof sarcastic guy. So
Right.
you should know that I'm going to accidentally hurt your feelings, which is not really... That was me creating a strategy that was not the best, but it was funny.
It helped you navigate a little bit.
It helped me focus on something. My other strategy was repeating, "It's just a TV show. It's just a TV show."
I think I remember that too.
Because I was like, had it in my head, like, okay, so a TV show, you know, it's a sitcom. You get like this minor complication and it gets resolved in 30 minutes. So, you know, if I can just push through 30 minutes, then this little problem, that'll go away. Or, you know, and because sitcoms are all based on, you know, socially awkward situations.
Right.
And basically Lucy lying to Ricky about something.
Right. And then you having a whole bunch of chocolates on a conveyor belt.
Yeah. I mean, basically every sitcom is a ripoff of I Love Lucy.
It's funny that you mentioned sitcoms.
Yeah.
Because when you use the AU, and that is a term that's a pronoun, or is that
it's not.
It's just that's a way to identify yourself as autistic. Yeah,
it's not really a pronoun. I like being experimental with language, because one of my little pet hobbies is linguistics, I guess. Amateur linguist, sure. But AU is actually this Facebook group. And so the AU and both the A and the U have a little Frenchy circumflex accent over them.
Right.
But that is like an autism identity signifier. And some people like to put that after their name.
Right.
Like if I was going to go that route, I'd be Andrew Coltrane, AU.
Sounds like a doctor.
Yeah, it sounds like a doctor. I'm not exactly against that, but and some people do that, but I'm just like exploring it because I found out about it. I'd seen people do it, and I like contacted the people that are part of this group, and I was like, "Hey, so what's this about?" And they say, "Well, you know, it's about positive autistic identity. So you put it on your name to say, hey, I'm not only am I autistic, but I want to make sure that I am, and I'm doing this because I want to be autism forward, have a positive interaction with this rather than try to pretend I'm somebody else.
Right.
But
doesn't that also have the opposite effect, which is people who don't understand or have a preconceived notion of what autism is? If you identify yourself that way, I think there's more of an understanding of what autism is nowadays, but I still think that it's like anything else. It's people have their preconceived notions and don't get to know a person for who they are. Are you more comfortable telling someone that you're autistic right off the bat, or are you more kind of if you connect with someone, then you kind of can tell them?
It's really a situational thing that I've been figuring out.
Right.
I would say, in situations where it's going to be important, like, say a situation like a potential relationship, like,
right.
This is theoretical because, it's not theoretical. It already happened.
Right.
But it's like the sort of things like, okay, I'm getting to know you. I'm really interested in you as a person. You need to know this about me because, in that sense. And that would be something that it's been hard for me to do. And I'm trying to be more brave about it.
Right.
And like recently, this came up for me at the school that I work at, where I work as a paraeducator, because on my teaching stint, I discovered that I don't have the social bandwidth to maintain classroom dynamics for a whole class.
Right.
I'm much better in a support role where someone else is the teacher in charge of that, and I can support the other stuff. So that's part of me finding my strengths and doing that.
Right.
But
finding your place, where you fit.
And also getting the chance to work with people that I know can benefit from my help, which it really rewards me.
Yeah.
And so at my school, another thing was going on this year. We are at a moment culturally where some of us are working to expand our understanding of gender.
Right.
And what that means. And so at my school, the counselors were like, look, we want to be more inclusive with our genders. We want to let kids know that if they're feeling like their biological gender, their whatever anatomy gender isn't really ringing true with who they are, that they can actually say, no, I want to be he, I want to be they, I want to be she, I want to be something different.
Right.
Than because I don't, and it's a delicate thing because, on the one hand, you're like, well, I don't want to believe that kids might think of themselves like that. But at the same time, from my working with kids, I realize that no, kids do have this sense of their identity is different at an early age.
Right.
And also there is so much overlap between, adults I would talk to and, other people that I interact, overlap between non-binary identifying or trans identifying, like with autism. Like there's something about the autistic brain setup that for a lot of people, it's like, well, this sort of socially constructed gender role is another socially constructed thing that I'm tired of putting on. Right. Because
and it's something else to navigate and figure out.
So there is a range. There are a lot of autistic trans people. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of non-binary autistic people. And there's like, even after I wrote my thing, I found out,
right. You said,
there's somebody who threw this term autigender out, which I was like, oh, that's a neat term. And I was like, and it was more like not exactly a gender, but it's sort of acknowledgement of the phenomenon that people with autism might see their own identity as sort of being separate from gender. Like gender is something that's kind of part of the body, but my mind is doing other things too. Right. So,
I mean, we talked about Pride Month last month.
Yeah.
I mean, is that I don't want to add more things to the word queer, but
some people really do identify as being neuroqueer, which is another new word that I found, which I don't know. There's so many words. I don't really understand what they all mean, but I feel like they have deep personal meaning to all the people that use them. And so that is really, really what I want to honor is that, you know, people who are like, no, I need to have this pronoun, or no, I need to have this identifier. They have deep personal reasons for why they feel that way, and that it doesn't cost me anything to honor that.
Right. It's respect.
It's respect. It's basic respect. And that's why for my little pronoun button at school, I was like, well, you know, I don't really care what pronoun people use with me. People are just going to use he, him. That's easy. And, but can you throw an AU on it so that kids who might feel like, oh, I want a different pronoun, know that there's an adult that also can have a different pronoun. Yeah. And even though it's not really functionally a pronoun.
Right.
But I have jokingly told people that, yeah, you can just say, hey, you.
Right.
And then I realized, oh, that rhymes with hey, you. Okay, it's fine.
Right.
You know, whatever.
To kind of get back to, you said you were mentioning the thing about the sitcoms, right?
Oh, the sitcoms, yeah.
Yeah. And AU being the chemical symbol for gold.
Yep.
Which reminds me of where I first learned that was The Facts of Life, the sitcom. Tootie was trying to study for a chemistry exam, and they were helping her trying to come up with mnemonics to remember these things. And the one that they had for gold was AU, give me back my gold watch.
AU.
Yeah. So that's whenever I see AU, that's what I think of. I don't think of, yeah.
Did Joe come up with that one?
No, it wasn't Joe. It was Natalie. I think it was Natalie. Yeah.
Natalie.
Yeah.
Natalie would do. Yeah, Natalie.
That's totally Natalie. That's so
totally
Natalie.
But see, here's the thing. Like Joe was the one I had a crush on.
Oh, you and me both, man.
Yeah, and then I'm like, oh, okay. So I tend to crush on tough girls. I get it.
Yeah, for me it was more strong girls.
Strong girls.
Right.
Yeah, that's the thing. The strong. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I think I've always admired strength in women. We can bring it back to ability. There's a strength from having the confidence of knowing who you are.
Right.
And that's what I'm really trying to get at is with my zine, with my little booklet there, is that we can be stronger if we can know who we are and give each other that respect, right?
Right.
It doesn't hurt me to honor another person for who they are.
How they want to be addressed.
How they want to be addressed. Exactly.
Can you tell me what being a non-gendered pilot of a gendered meat robot, what does that mean to you? And what does it have to do with ability?
What does that have to do with ability? Well, it has a lot to do with ability. So I have to deconstruct it. So the robot thing, I realized, as soon as I got on the Twitter and decided that my Twitter handle would be partly robot,
right? I
realized that this was connecting to a part of my identity. Part of it is the idea that robots don't have gender. Right. That was part of it. It was more like, but it was also there is kind of like an autism stereotype that, autistic people can be robotic. And right. I was like, well, let me own that.
Right.
And besides, partly robot sounds kind of fun. It's really close to party robot.
Right. Very close.
And so then I, turned it into a business name, Partly Robot Industries.
Right. Because you got to put the industries on the end there.
Because it's fun.
Right. You didn't use it. You didn't go with the go-to these days, which is LLC.
Well, no, because that requires more paperwork.
Yeah, that's true.
The limited liability corporation, right. Which is fine, but I'm like, I'm happy with
you're being an industry leader.
I'm happy with being a sole proprietorship.
Right. That's good.
I mean, for tax reasons, it might make sense later on. But what kind of liability danger do I have writing stuff?
Right.
I don't know. I don't
emotional?
Yeah. Someone's going to sue me for emotional damages, and I'll be like, well, stop reading so much. And
Yeah.
I'm gonna sue that guy that made me stay off Twitter for 4 years for emotional damages. But
let's not even
no,
go there.
no, that's fine. I stayed off. I'm back on. I'm
yeah.
back on. I'm on Twitter. You know, as I was like working on the zine, and again, sort of seeing this overlap with gender identity and
that's
autism
part of the reason,
identity.
Yeah, part of the reason why you reached out to me when we had that episode with Kenny.
Oh yeah, with Kenny, I was like, oh yeah, Kenny is what, you know, I want to be allies with Kenny.
Right.
That's basically what I'm going to say. I'm not going to, you know, like, yes.
Right.
Yes, I because that kind of social struggle of trying to convince people, no, this is who I am.
Right. Or figuring it out.
Or figuring it out,
right.
and saying, no, this is really who I am, is similar to the autism experience, especially for like adult diagnoses.
Right.
Where, you know, you tell somebody like, oh yeah, I got, you know, it turns out I'm autistic, and they're like, yeah, but you have a job, or no, but you're fine. You're not nearly as autistic as that Dustin Hoffman guy in that thing, or, you know.
Right. But they're missing the point.
They're missing the point. And the frustrating thing is to try to convince people, no, actually, this is who I am.
Right.
Which is sort of why it's important to normalize it and make people more aware.
Right. See, that's the thing. Okay, so this is always the conundrum with me as far as quote unquote normalizing something.
Oh yeah.
Are you normalizing it by calling it out? Because you're grouping yourself. You know what I mean? You're making it visible, but at the same time you're separating yourself from. Yeah. And do you want to be normal? I mean, do you want it normalized? I think it's something that you want as a part of. You're a human being, and you are a part of that group, but that's not who you are.
Yeah.
That's part of who you are, and you can be proud of that part, but that doesn't define you, right?
That's true. It's not all of who I am.
Right.
And really, so it doesn't have to.
And that can be applicable to anything, right?
True.
To gender, to denomination, to what you know, race, anything.
Yeah,
it's part of your identity, but it's not you. It's not your identity.
It's not. Yeah, and that's the thing. I have like lots of facets to my identity.
Right.
And I think that's part of where you get back to like the non-gendered pilot of a gendered meat robot.
Right.
Is like, well, my body is as anatomically male and anatomically white.
Right.
I would say like the first time I messed around with like an internet chat room, I was suddenly struck with the novelty of, oh, this is an arena where it's just my thoughts,
right? My
body and whatever that goes with it, like gender and whatnot, doesn't matter here,
right? And
I thought that was really neat,
right.
And then I found out that no, people are trying to find other people to hook up with there. And
they're having cyber.
They're having cyber. They're still doing the same stuff, but I wasn't interested in that.
Right.
So like that was this kind of thing, like, and especially like with doing online games, which let me tell you, another thing that happened during pandemic is I got really into this online game called Rise of Empires,
right? Which,
Catherine put up with. But
she put up with. Is it something that you devote a certain portion of your day to? Is it something?
There was a point where I realized I was probably spending 4 hours a day on it.
Oh Lord!
Yeah, which is too much.
Right.
But
that seems to be. Is it being autistic? I think isn't that something? There's something where you focus on things.
Yeah, you get
extremely.
That hyperfocus happens.
Right.
And
is that a part of autism? Is hyperfocus kind of?
It is. I don't know if it's a part of autism, but it's something that it's common for autistic people to do.
Okay.
You know,
right?
I mean, it also can be common for people with ADHD.
Right,
is another thing where like you think it means they can't focus at all, but sometimes they focus like hell on something.
Right.
And you know, I noticed this with myself. Sometimes I get really into something,
Mm-hmm.
I'm really, really into it for a while, and then I'm done.
Right.
And I move on to another thing.
Right.
But this Rise of Empires game, I mean, because we talk about video games on here, right? Can I talk about a video game?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we can talk about whatever. You know what? Before you get into the video games, I wanted to ask your opinion on, is there, when people talk about ability, they sometimes talk about aptitude. And there's the fundamental difference between aptitude and ability is what the aptitude is, the existing potential for something, as opposed to the learned ability.
Well, I'm gonna think about it differently. Like mostly, like especially in the context of my zine for ability, I'm coming from it as like a way to flip the script on disability.
Right.
So rather than focusing on stuff that people can't do, which is what the medical diagnosis model for like autism and other disabilities
right.
is like, you know, they're all about a checklist of, well, what can't you do? What can't you do? What can't you do?
Right.
And sometimes when you accept that sort of medical deficit diagnosis as your, you know, explanation for who you are, or
it's like a prison.
It's like a prison. You're setting limits on yourself,
right.
or somebody else is setting limits on you, because, you know, working in the tricky field of special education, there is that kind of thing where, you know, somebody decides, oh, so-and-so needs the support on this, but they kind of forget that the idea is you give them some support and then try to pull it back and see how well they do, you know, what level they really need the support.
Right.
You know,
right.
it's like the danger of over prescribing a medication. It's like,
right.
well, maybe a lower dose will do the job without the side effects we don't want, you know. And one of the side effects for, you know, overcompensating for disability is sort of learned helplessness. This idea of like, well, I'm disabled, so I can't do that. I have autism, so why should I bother talking to, you know, it's self-defeating.
Right. Right.
And I don't want to like discount anybody's experience who are like, no, this is really, really hard and I can't.
It's a valid feeling.
It's a valid feeling. And I want to let people feel like they can be empowered to try.
Right.
Because that's one thing that I do is like, you know, there was a little bit where I saw that movie Sleepwalk with Me.
Uh-huh.
You know, Mike Birbiglia.
Right.
And, you know, it's a great movie about him dealing with his sleep disorder.
Right.
But also it's about him learning how to be a stand-up comedian and being really terrible at it at first.
Right.
And I watched that movie and I was inspired. I was like, I want to be really terrible at something and keep working at it till I get better.
Right.
And so for a bit, I did actually end up going to a few open mic, you know, stand-up comedy things and trying some jokes and doing that. And I got to the point where I learned how I could get better. But I also learned that it was going to take a lot of work. And the payoff for me was not what I was looking for in life.
Right.
But I did make some people laugh a couple times.
Right. Right.
And, you know, and I learned some stuff about stage presence and trying to compose jokes and
right. No, that's the thing too. It's like, you know, trying, you know, it's a thing that all parents tell their children. It's like, oh, how do you know if you don't try? But because it's scary to try.
It's
sometimes.
Scary to try. And then there's that, you don't want to fail.
Right.
But there's like that.
Or even just be uncomfortable.
Oh, yeah.
And that's, you know, it's true. Not even about the failure. It's about the putting yourself in a situation that you're not comfortable with. Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a very human, you know, across the board human experience. You know, nobody really wants to be uncomfortable. And so I think that's another obstacle for people with autism or other things, you know, other of a host of disabilities, is that it can be uncomfortable. Like, uncomfortable can be your baseline.
Right.
So it does make it harder to try new things.
Yeah.
And so really it's like knowing who you are and knowing what it is specifically that might be making you uncomfortable and figuring out how do I address that so I can be more successful when I try these things.
Right.
You know?
I like to think of it as navigation.
Yes.
And I don't know, I use that term too often, I think, but it's like, I've had my bouts with panic and anxiety disorder, and I'm on medication.
See, you're one of the club.
Right.
The
neuro, what is it called? Neurodiverse. I'm
like, that is a broad net. I think
right.
I feel like it was started for like autism, but then there's like so much, there's the neurodiversity cousins, right?
Right.
And like, I think like from my own perspective, I'm like, it sort of comes back to, what is it am I trying to make myself part of a different club? And by the autism label. And it's like, I know I'm not really trying to make myself part of a different club. I definitely see myself as a human being. And like, that's the main club. I just want the understanding of what it means to be human, to not be restricted to this, this 1950s cookie cutter model of, this is how everybody should be because we defeated the Nazis. And now we get to be home, and the women did work in the factories, but now they shouldn't.
And make babies.
Yes.
Or whatever.
Let's make babies and sell them rock and roll records. That was the plan.
Yep.
That was not the plan.
I saw the manuscript.
Yeah. Dwight Eisenhower was like, make a lot of babies.
Step one.
Sell rock and roll.
All right. That's the way we do it.
And build the interstate.
Yeah. I think we could talk about this forever, but let's go back. You know what? No. I mean, I'm just saying, like, social skills classes and things like that.
Yeah.
I think that we've kind of scratched the surface and told people what your zine is about. Where can people pick up your zine?
On the internet. So far. Actually, right now, it is still in the nascent pre-publication status. It's as soon as I get it from the printer, I will have copies available for sale, but I'm currently running a Kickstarter campaign.
Okay.
And if you look up Partly Robots Ability Zine, and that's zine spelled Z-I-N-E.
Partly Robots, robots apostrophe?
Partly Robots apostrophe, Ability Zine.
Right.
Yeah, that should take you to the Kickstarter.
Okay.
And I've got the basic level to like pre-order a copy is pretty low, actually lower than what the cover price would be. Like the cover price is going to like be $4.50 in the US.
Right.
£3 in the UK because I got a fun UK angle on this whole thing.
Nice.
Yeah.
You got the connections.
I got a few connections.
Right.
Because there are zine distros different places.
Right.
And
there's a business to this.
It's more of like a cottage industry. Yeah.
Right.
Some people have turned it into a real business, but a lot of it's, people do it because they love it. And so it's kind of like a volunteer, we're trying to get this stuff out there thing.
Right. It's a slice of humanity that it's really unique and interesting to pick those up when you can and support the artist who does them. And
a lot of like, a lot of people who might not find themselves published in more mainstream venues like to go to zines.
Yeah. I think now the tendency is to go to online versions of the zine kind of presentation, which would be your various social media platforms.
Oh, my social medias are like little snippets of the zine stuff. Yeah.
Right.
And I've got a Twitter feed and a Instagram feed where
all Partly Robot Industries.
My handle would be @PartlyRobot.
Okay. And then you also have a Patreon, don't you?
I have a Patreon. Okay, what I do mostly on that is put my latest chapters of my time travel novel on there.
Right.
Because
Which
that's
is, go ahead and tell the name because I love the name.
The series name is Larry the Horrible Time Traveler.
Yep.
Because
comedy ensues.
It's wackiness. If you like, your Douglas Adams style sci-fi silliness,
right,
with a little post-apocalyptic humor thrown in,
right, and time travel,
and dinosaurs fighting robots.
Hell,
happens.
What more can you ask for?
A talking dog with two heads.
That you could do that too.
Yeah.
Do you have that?
I have that.
Ah, excellent. I think I knew that. I think I saw one of the.
Yeah.
But, so so you tried to go into video games and I steered you out of video games.
That's okay.
Let's go back to video games. So you said this I'm sorry, what is the name?
It's called Rise of Empires, and it's a phone game.
Right.
It's a sort of a strategy game.
Right. But it's multiplayer.
Right. And why am I advertising this thing? I'm not really advertising it. Don't play it.
No, but
Don't play it. I'm saying it's very addictive.
Insofar as when we mention games, we're kind of advertising them. Yeah. We're really not.
We're not.
Getting paid.
I mean, unless Rise of Empires wants to send Ben a check. But until that happens,
we're going to call it Rise of something else.
We're going to say it's a game where you build your castle and you form your alliance and you attack other castles.
Right.
And then you realize that, no, wait, those other castles, we're actually all in the same state and we need to attack the other state. Every time you think you know what's happening, another layer of complexity comes in.
Right.
And
is this because they add more things, or is this because people change their approach to the game? Or is it a little bit of colony, a little bit of colony?
Well, it's like when you start the game, you can start off in a new state, which basically.
So, like, I can be a liquid.
No. I mean, we'll call them provinces. You can start off in a new province.
You just completely bypass.
Yeah, I'm like, I know it's not states of matter.
Plasma.
It's basically a new game board. We'll say there's each province is a square game board, and you have a little castle. And if you have enough gems, you can teleport it to other places and put up shields. It's like
realistic history.
Not at all. I would get really engrossed in me playing this, and then I would look at it and this is bizarre.
Do you spend money on it? Because that seems like a microtransactions-y kind of thing.
I'm going to get in trouble, but I spent some money on it.
Yeah.
I mean, I wasn't going to the coffee shop then because of quarantine.
Right.
But, I spent a similar amount of money on it.
Right.
And then I was like, well, this is dumb because I'm spending real money to protect imaginary resources.
Yeah, that's true.
But that was
but it was fun.
I spent my Christmas money on it.
Oh, okay.
So that's how I justified it.
Gotcha.
But before that, I'd played it for a couple months, in the fall, and then that one, it was the part that really interested me is that there's players from all over the world, and that effectively I was into the meta game, which is you send emails to people and tell them to knock that shit off.
Right.
And then they respond to you and you're like, oh, that guy actually knocked that shit off. I have some power.
Right.
And then I stopped because I got really mad at some guy and I was like, I can't get mad at this. And then after Christmas, I was like, maybe I'll play the game again. Maybe I'll spend a little money on it and try to boost up my stuff. And then I ended up being in this province where everybody else had played the game before and they were like, we're going to do this right this time.
Right.
And so
which always means
it's
not.
It's not. They didn't. But it was interesting because this time I was like, well, I don't want to get so into that I'm a leader of an alliance.
Right.
I don't want to do it. So my strategy was I will join an alliance of Spanish speakers.
Okay.
And then it was like, oh, that guy's kind of did a dick move because he attacked a Korean for no reason. And in multiplayer games, you don't mess with the Koreans.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
This is little known fact.
They are an esports powerhouse.
Right.
They devote their lives to knowing how to play these games.
Okay.
Like some of them do. I mean, it's
isn't that a little racially profiling?
No, it's nationally profiling.
Okay.
No, I mean, like if you see like the way and it's weird because like on every like province of this game, and you can see what's going on in other provinces, but there's a lot of them have like these Korean alliances, and they're really proud about, they have names like Korean Empire or I Love Korea or
right.
it's like that they're Koreans,
right.
and they know that they're Koreans, or you can tell by because you're reading it, you're recognizing the Korean script,
right?
Because that's the one thing is like there's a lot of different languages going on,
right? Because it's a game that's played around the world. Right?
It played around the world, which means that you get an interesting sense of time,
right?
I ended up, I ditched that alliance because the leader attacked a Korean for no reason, and I was like, that's just gonna be bad. And so I went to this other alliance that was French, but turned out that guy who was running that one was kind of an idiot, and he decided to pick on the Koreans too. And I was like, what are you doing? And so then I kept moving alliances,
right?
But every alliance I went to, for whatever reason, they would promote me to like a level of leadership, and it's just because I had experience playing the game before, so I was able to level up my stuff pretty quickly.
Right.
And they're like, "Oh, we better make this guy," and I'm like, "I don't want that.
I don't want to do that extra
stuff.
I don't
want to do extra. It's a job."
Right.
But then I kept like taking it on because I felt the call of responsibility. And that, yeah, exactly. A responsibility to what?
Right.
But a game. But then at the same time, as I was doing this, I was like, okay, I am like interacting with people in different countries,
right.
Making friendships across. Also,
you're kind of justifying it.
Also, my in this game, I was like, my handle was like Robot Lord.
Okay.
And so like I was like going with the robot thing is like I don't want to tell anybody personal stuff about me. I'm going to try not to let gender come into what I do. But people would just assume I was male, I think.
Right.
But because as soon as somebody like revealed they were female and put up like their own, picture of themselves, then all of a sudden a bunch of creepy dudes are creeping at them. And so I was like, I just want to talk to the Belgian guy about what kind of beers he likes. What the heck?
Do you play any other games or just
okay, so I don't play this game anymore.
Right.
Because I realized that it was taking up all my life and I needed to make my zine.
Right.
But doing it and realizing that I could communicate with people in other countries and sort of figure out these deals gave me knowledge that I have the ability to do these things.
And coming around back to ability.
Back to the zine, back to the ability zine. So right. A researcher in the UK who was Anna Stenning, who was doing research into autistic life writing,
right.
found my last zine, and she had some grant money for putting on, some events related to her fellowship grant for, researching life writing. And she contacted me and she's like, well, I've got this grant and I'm supposed to put on events, but we can't have events because of the pandemic. Right. Can you make a zine for me?
Right.
Can you make another zine and I'll pay you some money? I was like, well, okay.
Right. So this is basically the reason why you haven't been playing games or haven't been.
Well, I was trying to do both for a while.
Yeah.
And then I realized that.
But it's only this Age of Empires game.
Or it was, you can call it that. That's not the. It's right.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
it's not Age of Empires.
It's it's another Empire game.
Right.
The Empires Strike Back.
No, that's. I think that's a movie.
That was a movie.
Some sort. Yeah.
Okay. Well, Raise the Titanic.
It has something to do with space wizards or something.
Yeah. So anyway, the space wizards fight back. Right. It was a good one. They had a little guy named Youre. They liked him.
Yeah, he was an MTV VJ once.
Yeah.
Anyway,
so anyway, bringing it back to ability, the video game really taught me that I had the tools to coordinate with people overseas to make stuff happen.
So that was the thing that was the video game helped you realize that.
The video game helped me boost my confidence in being able to. So now I was like, but it also kept me from getting work done on the zine.
Right.
And then I was like, I just need to stop and finish this.
Mm-hmm.
And so I quit the game cold turkey. But I play Civilization on my phone.
Oh, okay.
Because that one is more like meditative for me and
Civilization, as in the Sid Meier's.
Yeah. There's one on my phone like Civilization Revolutions or something that I've just had on my phone forever.
Yeah.
And I'll just play through that in just sort of like a meditative way.
And and that's similar to, that seems like it's similar to the Empires. It's got like that kind of feel.
It's got some of the same dynamics. It's just
not online.
It's not online, and you're not getting sucked up into people's drama for getting mad at each other for messing up the freaking reign of chaos.
That's the one thing with the way. I mean, I don't know. You and I were both raised in a gaming culture where arcade games and things like that there was a social sort of dynamic around those. You would go there with your friends, and you bullshit with your friends. And you talk to people, and
if somebody had the quarter in the machine, and the other three of you were standing around them, and yep.
But I mean that's the thing that I usually play now. I just play games for story. If I I don't play them for interaction with people. The interaction with people I prefer is face to face and talking to people.
That's more genuine.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you think so? Do you think that's more genuine?
I feel like that's what they tell us.
Well, I mean, that's
more genuine than I would say, like, okay, in my experience in the game,
right,
where I was deliberately trying not to give any personal information,
right,
and also sort of making some sorts of bonds with some of these people,
right,
about stuff. Involved with strategy and playing the game. So it was kind of like a sports thing, I guess.
Right.
It's very much like feeling like I was on a sports team.
Right. But you weren't.
Like it's on an intramural softball team, and we're going to go do it. And then, except for most of these people were in other countries at different times.
Right.
So, and because of pandemic times and working from home, I was able to look at my phone way too often.
Right. So it kind of pulled you into it.
And that's why I feel like I was spending 4 hours a day playing it, which is probably not an exaggeration, but it was like, 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there, 5 minutes there.
Right. But yeah, total. Yeah.
But if
I can never play games more than an hour, 2 hours tops.
Yeah.
I mean, just personally, it just doesn't. I can't do it any longer than that.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
That sounds healthy.
I don't want to. I mean, it's just like I play a little bit before bedtime, and then
But some of them really are, especially the phone games, are really designed to like keep you at them, and with the in-game purchases,
right? Exactly.
Like, well,
microtransactions.
If I just spend 99 cents right now, then I get the upgrade that thing, and
right.
Yeah,
and that's part of the thing with it seems to be an acceptable thing in phone games, but not an acceptable thing when it comes to console games. People complain about the microtransactions and things.
Yeah.
But I mean that's the way people make their money on cell phone stuff, on phone games. So.
Yeah, there's a dynamic to it that
I think your perspective is interesting as far as being able to communicate with people.
Yeah. I mean, it was that was what was fascinating to me more than the gameplay itself was the look, I'm practicing my French, or look,
Right.
I recognize those Spanish cuss words. That guy's being rude. Right. And it's like, but I'm like, well, is this really, I'm not having a genuine experience because some people were really sharing more about themselves, and I was not really willing to in that venue.
Right.
But
you don't have to.
You don't have to.
Right.
But also, like, a lot of people are going there because, hey, there's a pandemic going on, and this is how we're getting our social interaction.
Right.
And so that was cool for that reason.
Right.
I mean, I did like make a Moroccan friend that I was like,
like a pen pal,
like sort of like a pen pal, but then it's like, well, we're just doing this stupid game, and like, I don't know.
Right.
And also, getting in that leadership role in an alliance was kind of like, having a project management job.
without the pay.
Without the pay, the long hours, but no pay. It's like, what the hell am I doing? And so then I realized, like, oh, okay, I've actually been practicing these skills, and I'm going to make this zine. I was like, I'm going to coordinate a print run in the UK. I'm going to find somebody that can help me. And so it was like, okay, I know how to communicate with people overseas over this time difference.
Yeah, so those skills got you.
The Zoom skills I picked up from school.
Those abilities, if you will.
I learned new things, and I discovered I had abilities.
Right.
In areas, and so because of that, you can
buy this wonderful zine.
Because of that, because of my abilities, you can buy my zine.
Right. And
here's a good reason to buy my zine. Because hopefully it will entertain you as well as educate you.
Right.
I call it fundertainment.
Funder?
No, fundercation. Edutainment.
Okay.
Well, let's see. It's edutainment.
That is staying in.
That's staying in. That was scripted.
Yeah.
That was in my notebook. You will find it.
Okay.
You'll find it right here. I had that written in here.
Okay. I trust you. I got it.
Fundertainment. I'm gonna make a T-shirt.
Yeah, dude, you've got your industry, man.
I got it. Yeah, I got. If I sell one of them, it'll be a miracle.
Right.
But no, the zine. I'm selling them, but I also know full well that I will probably give away at least half of them that I produce.
Right.
Because it's more about getting that message out there.
Right.
And so that's why I'm doing the Kickstarter. Is like, well,
but the thing is, with more money, you can do more of these things.
With more money, you can do more of them. Yeah. And yes. So I'm definitely sending, 50 copies off the bat to my
friends in the UK.
To the University of Leeds. Anna Stending. She's like, I can get some out to people. Is 50 too much? And I was like, oh, you can have 50. I'm like, you said you're going to give me money from,
So yeah, 50 is
that's
plenty.
fine. That's fine. That's like, I don't know. I don't even understand how UK money works.
Yeah,
they have this funny L squiggly thing in front of it,
and they're no longer euro. Right? They're not in the EU. They never took the euro as a currency. Oh, okay. So it was always
they always had pounds. One foot out the door.
It was always pounds and pence.
Always pounds and pence. They didn't do the shilling so much anymore, but
no,
not since they took the money metric.
We're reaching the end of the show here, so let's. One thing I wanted to mention though to you. Even though you don't play these, it seems like what you would play on games is more strategic civilization kind of simulator kind of, strategy games, right? Is that fair?
That is fair.
Okay.
I'm better with turn-based than real time.
Like first-person shooter kind of things, not your deal. Yeah.
Nah.
Well, there is, I think I mentioned this to you before, but there is a character in the game Overwatch, which is basically, it's a cooperative multiplayer kind of game where you've got teams of 6 against other teams of 6, and each character has their own roles to assist, like either do damage or heal or things like that. There is a character that in their backstory they are autistic. It is a character named Symmetra, who, well, I guess it's amputee also with one arm that's a cybernetic arm.
Partly robot.
Yep, partly robot, exactly. And she's a hard light architect. And it's a future thing where there's a technology that this Indian corporation has made that can basically, you can build physical things with light.
Yeah.
So she is one of these architects and has to protect. Built into her storyline is the fact that she's autistic, and that's why she has approached things in building differently because of her autism. So that's kind of an interesting. I think there need to be more characters of that. Another thing I wanted to ask you before we left about video games specifically was, there are things now where they have accessibility options for games, right? Is there something that makes a game more accessible to someone with autism? Or is it something where certain games appeal to them? Is there something that connects with autistic children, adults, and draws them into games? Or is it not something that they can design around or specifically for?
Video games are designed for autistic people.
Okay.
Probably designed by autistic people in a lot of cases.
Right.
Like the guy that invented Pokemon.
Right.
I mean, he's diagnosed.
Yeah. I was asking an ignorant question.
No. What I'm saying is that it's interesting. The problem tends to be figuring out a way to get them to enjoy something besides games.
Okay. So characters being autistic or bringing in people who are like, hey, I can identify with that. That's not a problem because they can communicate with machines more comfortably sometimes.
Sometimes let's see. This is all getting problematic, but I'm
sorry, it's partially my ignorance.
No, it's not. I would say, honestly, I have this feeling that Silicon Valley and a lot of computer engineers are already have a lot of autistic traits,
right, and
sort of design things that would be easy for them to navigate. So a lot of computer programs and games are already intuitive for a lot of people. A lot of autistic kids would just be like, oh yeah, I get this.
Right.
And
they pick it up really quick.
They pick it up really good. Also, just kids in general pick up technology really quickly.
Right.
Because it's kind of, because their brains are just ready to learn new things.
Like big sponges.
They're big sponges. Yeah. And they learn technology fast. And that's just, it's like, if I've learned that if I'm having trouble with my technology, give it to a kid. And then they're like, no, you do this. And then, exactly. Then I feel old. God, let me talk to my mom about her drawer full of cords that she doesn't need.
Right. You ever ask a kid to pantomime a phone? That's really a way to feel old. Is you say, hey, can you, if you're telling someone you're on the phone and you're just using your hand, how you do it? And people are putting their hand up next to their ear like they're on a cell phone, as opposed to using the old school handset.
Or getting a banana.
That's
one of my favorite cafeteria gags.
The banana phone?
The banana phone. Oh, it's just a banana. I'm sorry. It's not a phone call. The first graders love that.
Potassium.
But anyways, what
So
I feel like I want to go back about your idea of including autistic characters in the games,
right?
Which I think that's cool.
Right.
I think it could be done really well. And I do think that people that know, that identify, would like that.
Right.
But I also think that a lot of kids often aren't told what their diagnosis is or
Right.
explained. It's not always explained to them.
Mm-hmm.
So it might be a wash.
Right.
It might be a wash.
Just because they don't realize, but people who are older who identify as that being on a back part of a backstory.
As part of a backstory. And, it's kind of like kids are kids, so you want to give them good examples, and you hope they take. But
Yeah.
in the end, everybody loves Mr. Furley.
And that is a wonderful way to end our episode, I believe. Everybody loves Mr. Furley. And on that note, that has been our episode on ability. Thank you to Andrew of Partly Robot Industries for sharing his views on the word ability. You know what the goodbye thing is, don't you, Andrew?
Go with God. No, that's a different podcast.
That's a different podcast. It's like, I don't know.
Last time it was like somebody was late and had to go.
Oh, that's true. Let's not do that, though. Let's just do it traditionally, and we'll say, thank you for joining us, and my name is Ben.
My name's Andrew.
And we've been your hosts, and have a wonderful day.
Go with God. Sorry, that's Spencer Crittenden's thing.
Okay.
So. Spencer and Jeff, invite me on your podcast.